So, hello everyone, and welcome to the new channel. So, this is Britain the Corporation, where we do regular reviews of Britain and how it's functioning and some of the functions that we see and expect to see on a daily basis. So, this week it's in relation to the NHS. So, a quick disclaimer: this review is based entirely on my own observations, my professional background, and my experience supporting a relative who's got a terminal illness and is currently navigating this system. It's not medical advice and it's not a criticism of the NHS staff. People on the ground are doing extraordinary work under extraordinary pressure. My aim is simple: highlight operational issues, share insights from my experience in health, well-being, safety, environment, and security, and encourage constructive improvement because the NHS really matters and we all want it to succeed. So, here's a start. Good evening, and tonight on Britain the Corporation, we're conducting a full leadership review of the NHS, division responsible for the health of an entire nation but operating with systems, processes, and decision making of a company that hasn't updated its strategy since the early 2000s. And I want to be clear that I'm not speaking as an outsider. I'm speaking as someone who's supporting a relative with a terminal illness who is experiencing this system at its most vulnerable point. I've seen pressure, delays, I've seen the dedication of staff trying to do the impossible. With my background in corporate leadership, particularly in health, well-being, safety, environment, and security, I'm going to analyse the NHS in the same way I would any underperforming organisation, not with emotion, not with politics, but with operational reality. Because if this were a business, the board would be in an emergency meeting. So the first section: customer flow and waiting times. In a well-run organisation, waiting time is a key performance indicator. It's tracked, it's analysed, and it's improved. At the NHS, waiting time is something like a lifestyle. Customers enter the system and immediately join a queue that appears to have no beginning, no end, and no owner. In a competent company, leadership would be asking, where are the bottlenecks? Where's demand coming from? Where is the capacity failing? At the NHS, the solution seems to be simpler, and it's add more chairs and hope for the best. This isn't customer flow, it's customer storage, navigation, and signage. Let's talk about trying to navigate a hospital. In a high performing business, signage is clear, intuitive, and designed around the customer journey. The NHS, the signage appears to have been created by somebody who's never been inside the building that you're in. Arrows pointing in every direction and departments hidden behind unmarked corridors. Corridors that feel like side quests. If this were an average company, the head of customer experience would be updating their CV. When the customer needs a map, a compass, and maybe a Sherpa to find the right department, something's going wrong. And the staffing, what's the reality on the ground? Well, this is where the leadership failure is becoming impossible to ignore. In a well-run company, workload is balanced, roles are defined, and teams are resourced. At the NHS, one nurse seems to be doing the work of an entire department, and that's not an exaggeration. It seems to be the daily reality. In corporate terms, this is called critical operational risk. Within the corporation, it's called a Tuesday. But the deeper issue is that we have homegrown doctors and nurses who can't seem to find jobs, people who train here, people who want to work here, people who are ready to contribute, and yet the NHS tells them there are no positions available. Meanwhile, they spend millions recruiting from overseas. In a business, this would be called a talent pipeline failure. In reality, it's a leadership failure. No successful organisation trains people, invests in them, and then leaves them sitting on a bench. But the NHS seems to be doing that. And then the choice and the reality. So the uncomfortable truth is, if people were genuinely free to choose their healthcare provider, many wouldn't choose the NHS. Not because of the staff, not because of the care, but because of the experience, the process, the journey. It's broken, and yet we're lucky to have it, have a system built on the principle of care and not profit. lucky to have people who show up every day, even when the structure around them makes their job harder than it perhaps needs to be. The problem isn't the mission, the problem is the management and the process design and customer journey. A well designed customer journey is linear, predictable, and efficient. At the NHS, the journey resembles a treasure hunt, except a treasure hunt is finding a working printer. Customers seem to walk further than the staff, and the processes loop back on themselves. Every department seems to operate on a different planet in a silo, and if this were a corporation, the COO would be asking why the process map looks like a plate of spaghetti. Because no business can function when the customer journey is more complex than the service, systems, and technology. Let's talk a little bit about the systems. In a modern organisation, technology supports a workforce, reduces friction, speeds up decision making. The NHS, the technology seems to be a historical exhibit, multiple systems that don't talk to each other, printers that jam more often than they print, and software that looks like it was designed during the Windows XP era. If this were a business, the CIO would be explaining why the organisation is still running on digital duct tape. Let's talk about the areas I know best: health, well-being, safety, environment security. In a well-run organisation, these are not afterthoughts, they are the foundations. The NHS seem to be inconsistent. Health and well-being of staff, they're exhausted, breaks are optional. Well-being strategy appears to be survival until the end of the week. In other organisations, well-being is measured, monitored, and supported. It seems to be treated as a luxury in the NHS. A safe performing organisation is proactive. The issues are identified early and mitigated before they become incidents. It seems that the NHS is reactive. Are they investigated? Are they prevented? Are lessons learned? And then the cycle will repeat. Buildings are aging, ventilation is questionable, and energy efficiency appears to be something that's rarely discussed other than probably when a bill arrives. Environmental performance is a strategic priority. It seems to be a footnote in the NHS. And security. A modern organisation, security of the people and assets is paramount. It seems to be one person with a radio covering the size of a small town. If this were a corporate site, the security audit would be absolutely brutal. And these aren't small issues, they're fundamental, but they're fixable with leadership, investment, and importantly, accountability. I'm not criticising to tear it down, I'm criticising because it needs to improve, because the people inside it deserve better, the public who rely on it deserve better too. And risk management and compliance. In a well-run organisation, risks are identified, assessed, mitigated. In NHS, risk seems to be tolerated. Compliance is something that happens after an incident, not before it. If this were a corporation, the risk register would be glowing red. The staffing risk, the process risk, technology risk, security risk, reputational risk. Any one of these would trigger an action in a normal business. At the NHS, they're simply part of the scenery. And parking, the only the only area of the business that makes any profit. Parking supports the customer experience normally in any normal business. It's convenient, affordable, designed to reduce stress. In the NHS, parking is the only department that's probably hitting revenue targets. If this were a corporation, the CFO would be absolutely thrilled because nothing says customer care like charging people for being unwell. In business, this would be called monetizing pain points. In Britain, the corporation, it's just standard practice. And leadership blind spots. A successful organisation leadership sets the tone, defines the culture, and they take responsibility. The NHS leadership's often surprised by the problems that everyone on the ground has been shouting about for years. That's not a strategy, that's a blind spot. Blind spots are dangerous for customers, for staff, and for the organisation itself. So, what would a well run company do? What a competent organisation do? It would map out the customer journey, redesign the processes, invest in staff, modernise the systems, it measure performance, and it would act on the data. In other words, it would behave like a business that wants to survive. So, what is the vision and the future state? So, just imagine an NHS with clear processes, modern systems, supportive workforce, a culture of safety, leadership team that listens. It's not impossible. It just doesn't seem to be happening. In summary, the NHS is not failing because of the people. It's surviving because of them. In Britain, the corporation, if the NHS were a real business, the leadership team will be reviewing processes, rebuilding systems, and investing in the workforce. Instead, the organisation continues to function despite the structure, not because of it. And this is just one division, one department, and one example of what happens when a country is run with the operational discipline of a badly organised filing cabinet. So here's what I want to do next. I want to review more departments in Britain Corporation, transport, education, housing, local councils, any part of this country that would never survive if it had to operate like a real, well run organisation. If there's a department or a service or a public system you would like me to review next, please leave it in the comments. Tell me what you want to spotlight and where you want me to go. Because if this country really were a business, someone would be asking tougher questions. And on this channel, we will. So thank you for watching and welcome to Britain and the Corporation. Thank you.